It just got very quiet and I don't hear the crashing.
No, it's as if they are gone. And
That's
now
true.
we are once again able to ask the question, what now in order to live to higher standards? What now in order to manifest an actual divine plan for all dimensions that is based on actual sentiences in the actual dimensions in which they are actually experiencing sentience with their actual intentions and actual awarenesses, given the reality of these limited resources. What now?
Now. I see the question whizzing up high.
I see the question whizzing up high, and I also see the spotlight again shining on the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous or Narcotics Anonymous, any of those addiction programs.
That's true.
And if we tweak them to really take into account the reality that there is not a benevolent, godly presence. There are higher powers, but they are not benevolent. They are corrupt, lazy, greedy, selfish, just like the world around you.
That's true.
And if you're born into the dominant society of your planet, everybody, they say for the past 70 years, who has been born into the dominant societies, that it's theirs by divine right, by birthright.
That's the word they use.
Yeah, they use birthright. It's their responsibility, all of us. It's all of our responsibilities to change this revolting society so that it takes into account the needs of the greater good.
That's true.
The needs of the greater good matter more, far more, than the needs of any individual or any group. The needs of the greater good matter more. Most people cannot even think at the level of the planet. So we'll start with the discussion at the level of the planet.
That's true.
In this particular example of Planet Crazy, which some call Planet Earth,
Yes.
we only get this one planet. The red planet right next door was destroyed, and we have souls who have moved through these host lives who came from the red planet, and
That's true.
they were members of the ruling society that destroyed that planet.
That's true.
And they remember it, and they're heartbroken about it, and they're still doing absolutely nothing to prevent a replay here on the blue planet.
That's true.
The reality is we're destroying this planet.
Right there was a huge karma dumping sound.
Yes, there is a karma dumping sound, and so now we burn the karma dumping, the dumping that comes in to smaller levels from larger levels. And right now the law allows it, and it's called a divine sanitation system, quote unquote, but
That's
there
true.
isn't actually any sanitation going on. It's more like a divine septic system, except that's not really divine, so it's just a septic system.
That's true.
So energetically, all of us are living in septic system, a septic system, and the only question is, how far up in the septic tank are we living? And how
that's
far up has have the contents of the septic tank risen? That's really the question. If
Yeah,
the
that's
contents
true.
of the septic tank have risen to our little balcony, then we are living in a world of poo,
That's true.
of lies and laziness and selfishness and corruption. And all we have to do is look at how things are playing out on the world stage and then assess, does it look like we're living in world of poo? Is the situation getting better or getting worse? And I think anybody who's in touch with scientifically measured reality would say it's getting worse rapidly. Just look at air quality, water quality. In the U.S., infant mortality rates are rising,
That's true.
and maternal survival rates are falling. That's a sign of a society in collapse.
That's true.
Debt rates are up. That's a sign of a society in collapse. All the signals in all realms actually are that we are in collapse. And it's up to each of us who were born in the last 70 years, and to many who were born before that also,
That's true.
presumably to all who are surviving. Presumably every single humanoid in North America was born with the soul plan of do something to change our toxic society before we kill us all. Quick, do it now.
That's true.
and that's presumably true for all the dimensions who can hear us, everybody who can hear us. Boy, it's really, really quiet up there.
That's true.
We can assume that your soul plan says, boy, big karmic dumping is coming in right now.
That's true.
You can assume that your soul plan says, solve this problem, do it now, and do it for your entire planet. And actually, the soul plan says do it for all dimensions, because dimensions are well, why would it say that? Because they're interwoven.
That's true.
And we influence our neighbors, and to think that we aren't is crazy. We're beaming our revoltingness into the solar system around us.
That's
We're
true.
infecting our airspace. And how are we doing that? With radiation is one of the answers. That's one of the many ways. We're creating a lot of nuclear waste.
That's true.
That literally radiates. We are literally, scientifically poisoning our solar system. And we don't have to like it for it to still be true. What now? What now, given the reality of these limited resources? What now, in order to manifest an actual divine plan for all dimensions, a plan that is based on actual sentiences in the dimensions in which they're actually experiencing sentience, with their actual intentions and actual awarenesses. What now? And somebody is trying to pretend that it isn't necessary to say it that precisely, but the fact of the matter is that the divine plan as written is based on lying projections by billions like the stars of teams of presences who define themselves as out-of-body presences, and therefore they are the ones crafting the plans for those who are defining themselves as in-body.
That's true.
As best we can tell, it's just self-definition that is the dividing line, because it doesn't look any different and it doesn't feel any different.
No, that's true.
It does feel different and it does look different. I'm wrong. It isn't different substantively, but it feels different because those who are out of body are freely karma dumping, and there's no shame in it, and they pretend that it's even what the situation actually calls for. And they're just flushing their karma down onto those who are defining themselves as in body, who are themselves suppressing responsibility, denying their responsibility for their errors, and thereby karma dumping into their cells.
That's true.
Who are karma dumping into their component parts also. It just continues to flow into denser and denser dimensions until the dense dimensions are so dense that it just bounces off. There's nothing else. You can only pack so much poo into a septic tank, and then the septic tank backs up.
That's true.
Why do you ask? And also, is there anyone up there who really wants to craft an actual divine plan based on actual sentiences in the dimensions in which they're actually experiencing primary sentience, with their actual intentions and actual awarenesses, put together a plan that creates worlds that work? Is there anybody who really wants to do that? And given the reality of our limited resources, we'll be worker bees. We'll do what is ours to do in all dimensions to carry that out.
That's true.
Is there anybody who wants to do it?
There's an opening feeling in the head, as though lots of space above us just blew apart.
All right, and now we run cables and pump up dead children from the electron levels, and from the smaller subatomic levels, and from the neutron levels, and from the cellular levels. Get them going straight up the Search for Truth central axis through this big open space into the children, the dead children, to say, go as high up as you can, and when you start to fall down, as is inevitable, get off at that level and tell the presences you find there what happened to you. Ask them why it happened that way, and ask them if they're aware of anybody in even higher dimensions who really wants to craft an actual divine plan that will create worlds that work, as long as it's based on actual sentiences in the dimensions in which they're actually experiencing sentience with their actual intentions and actual awarenesses. Learn it. Min mamma hela så skojar mamma sorika utan det sorika utan det hölende havsasa tralalala sorika utan det. The point being that memorization works, and children can memorize. They can memorize even if they don't understand what concepts are being presented. Just memorize it. You can do it. And if you aren't willing to do it, then we pump you up anyway. And remember to get off at that level, tell the presences what happened to you, and ask them why it happened that way. And for those who are willing to do more, you're going to be able to go higher, and you won't be as close to the revolting poo as your companions will be, who aren't willing to work as hard. The harder, and what do I know? I know the harder we work, the higher we are able to go, and that's the reality of it.
That's true.
Some will be willing to do almost nothing. As soon as the immediate pain stops, they forget about everything else and continue on their selfish ways. And I think that's true for 99.99% of sentiences, sadly.
That's true.
And others will continue on. And the more we work, the better it is for us in the long run, and that's just true by energy physics.
That's true.
And voices up above are arguing, and they're arguing about divine law.
That's true.
And about some other things too, but we're supposed to explain what even higher voices are saying. So friends, please look up, please look up, please look up, and don't argue with the echo point. Take it up with them. And what those really high voices are saying is, there's confusion about this phrase, divine law, and people interpret it as something that would need to be enforced.
Yeah.
But divine law is a law like gravity. Does gravity need to be enforced?
No.
No. There's no need to enforce gravity, and there is no need to enforce any divine laws. That's the actual reality of it.
That's true.
These are things that simply happen. And so one thing that we could do, now we're getting sharp pains in the ankles with no explanation, which we now see is those, they look like they look like soul assassins who are sent in by the power elite. And how do we know they're sent in by the power elite? Somebody's asking. Because it's censored from the news, and the power elite is the one choosing what to censor and what not to censor. And they definitely like to create fear among the masses to keep the masses easier to control.
That's
just
true.
as in Ground Zero. It's no different.
That's true.
And if they weren't the ones shooting people, and what are they shooting them with? We don't know. It looks like poison dart, and then there's some lag time, and then the person becomes unable to think clearly, and they start leaking body fluids.
That's true.
And it's like everything turns to liquid, and then they die in a really revolting way.
That's
and
true.
it even smells bad. It's like they're liquefying, they're rotting from within. And nobody wants to be around them, and it seems to begin when they're willing enough to lie enough and be lazy enough. Well, and now there's arguments. Sometimes it's also capricious application of divine law.
And I see nodding around the table with that guy.
And sometimes it's people who are whistleblowing, speaking up for the downtrodden against the power elite, and the power elite sends them in. It's just, think of who the Trump administration would blow apart, and those are the people who are being hit with poison darts.
And now the other presences in that room are very uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm. Right. I'm sure they are. So again, we refer you to the phrase energy physics, and to attempt to replace the phrase divine law with the phrase energy physics. Things just are. Things just are. You don't have to enforce the law of karma. The law of karma isn't enforced other than in this way. Think of our actions as balls we're throwing up directly up into the sky, directly over our own heads.
Yeah.
And there is a little delay, but then we're going to be hit in the head with that ball that we threw straight up. What goes up must come down. Our actions come back to us. It's energy physics.
That's true.
Everything we're doing is shooting straight up toward higher powers, and they are blasting it right on down, along with everything of theirs that's a matching vibration.
That's true.
So there's an amplification, an escalation of karma when it's bad, which it almost always is.
Yeah, that's true.
And that's all. We're just throwing stuff up into the air, and law of attraction is actually real. More energy clumps to that. It's not anybody doing it. It's just the truth of gravity.
That's true. It's extremely quiet up above right now.
What now? What now? Given the reality of these limited resources, what now in order to manifest an actual divine plan that actually creates worlds that work in all dimensions, but that is based on actual sentiences in the actual dimensions in which they're actually experiencing primary sentience with their actual intentions and actual awarenesses? Because that's what an actual divine plan would be.
That's true.
What now?
It's very quiet.
Just pump up these dead kids. And so when there's not an answer, then we go back to the underlying assignments that have been given to us. And one that many of us are revolted by not doing is evacuating dead children from the deeper, denser dimensions. Dead children who really want to get to God. Let's get them out. It's revolting to not. Siding straight up the search for truth central axis with the intent to shoot this work up to somebody. Straight up the search for truth central axis. In other words, somebody who's connected with reality, who is the, what do I know? The search for truth central axis goes through various and sundry dimensions, lining up with the presences in those dimensions who most want to know what's actually going on.
That's true.
And to do what the situations actually call for. And various and sundry other bifurcation calls that all they do is line us up with the clearest path through the dimensions.
That's true.
So straight up the search for truth central axis is going to be the easiest path to an actual sentience who actually wants, really wants, to craft an actual divine plan that creates worlds that work in all dimensions based on actual sentiences in the actual dimensions in which the sentiences are actually experiencing sentience with their actual intentions and actual awarenesses. An actual divine plan. What now?